The Blues have faced every challenge in front of them and answered the call every time, winning a franchise record 12 straight games last night against their divisional foe in Colorado. They remain the hottest team in hockey as they have seized the wildcard one spot away from another divisional rival in Minnesota. Today on Note News, we're going to break down just how dominant this record-setting streak has been. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Note News today. Unfortunately, no John with us, so I am just recording this video to post today on Sunday the 6th. John is busy with other things, and so we thought this would be the best way to go forward for this episode. We'll have our regularly scheduled stuff as usual this coming week, but he's gone for the weekend, so we are adjusting. So today, I wanted to take this time to break down just how exceptional this last stretch of play has been for the team. I mean, we've all watched it. We've all seen it, that winning their 12th straight game, a franchise record, best in the NHL. We're going to get into all of that and more today. Of course, if you are tuning in for the first time, welcome. We're a St. Louis Blues podcast. If you are a longtime listener, thanks for checking us out as always. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, share, all those things. So getting into the streak, the Blues win streak is the highest in the NHL this season, not just in franchise history, in the entire league. Beating Winnipeg's 11-gamer, which started at the end of January, beginning of February. So the Blues now stand alone atop the NHL. And of course, as there are only 6 games to play and no one is on a 7-game win streak currently, that will be the highest streak for the season. And we'll see how high that goes, knock on wood, into the coming games, which they have a chance to extend this and really keep it going hot, which would be a lot of fun. But just how good has this team been under Jim Montgomery throughout the season, and then under this winning streak? Is this something that is potentially going to fade away? And is this something that perhaps when the competition level rises in the playoffs, is it going to be something that is too much for this young team to handle? Or is it going to be something that we can actually expect that this is what the Blues can do going forward, is win and beat anybody? Obviously, they're playing really hot right now, but I want to get into why that is, and I will make my case for whether this is or isn't repeatable. So, obviously, Jim Montgomery brought in on November 15th, or 25th, excuse me, for in relief of Drew Bannister. Monty was fired by Boston, a former Jack Adams winner, which, if you are not familiar, means the best coach in the NHL award. Of course, when the Bruins set the single-season record for wins and points percentage in 2023, Jim Montgomery was their head coach and won Jack Adams with them, and is putting on another masterclass of a coaching performance this season. So this season, Jim Montgomery with the Blues had a 22-16-6 record before the 12-game win streak. So, of course, doing some quick math, that would put them up to 34-16-6 record. Under Montgomery all season, the Blues are third in points percentage. At even strength, they are 49th in Corsi for percentage, which is really interesting because that is not a particularly dominant mark to be at for that statistic. For those of you who aren't familiar, Corsi for percentage is essentially the shots, blocks, and misses is all encompassed in the Corsi statistic. So Corsi for at 5-on-5, and this is all recorded at 5-on-5 or even strength. So Corsi for is shots plus blocks plus misses, essentially how much output you're putting into the game, and Corsi against is how many shots, blocks, and misses you're allowing, so how much you are getting outplayed. It's generally just a way to gauge how well a game script is going for either team. And the Blues right now, as I said, are at 49%, which is not particularly exceptional. The league leaders right now are the Carolina Hurricanes, who just always seem to be the leaders in Corsi for percentage at 61%. The next best is the Florida Panthers at 56%. So the Hurricanes are in a tier of their own, but the top teams are all well above 50%, sort of like a good mark for a face-off. If you're above 55%, you're pretty much a dominant face-off winner. Same thing with Corsi percentage. So not necessarily a good statistic there for the Blues. So how has this team been winning so many games? If they haven't been doing it statistically how you're supposed to, does that mean that perhaps some regression is expected? Well, it sure helps when you're first in goals for percentage. Under Montgomery, and this is since his hiring, so not just in this win streak, the Blues are first at 5-on-5 in goals for percentage. Their expected goals for percentage is actually 11th at 51% versus 60% at the actual rate they've been scoring. So they've been finishing a lot higher than the expected metrics might dictate. Now, once again, this could lead you to believe that perhaps some regression to the mean is expected, and that could be the case. I would argue that I still think that this is a really reliable, repeatable thing that the Blues can win off of, because in their past couple games, on the 29th, March 29th against Colorado, they were held to 2 goals. On April 1st against Detroit, they were held to 2 goals. And they still found ways to win. So as we're going to get into, there's a lot more than just these raw statistics that go into winning. But they have found ways to finish and convert their chances, which has also been critical to their success. Guys like Bolduc on the power play, Dylan Holloway, who is out with injury right now, but it had been so essential. And then, of course, Jordan Kyrou being the team's leader in goals scored. All have helped really boost those goals for percentage above their expected numbers. So you're getting contributions from guys that we at this point expect to, and that's been huge. That's been able to really put points on the board, put pressure on the opposing team, and just run through teams in the league. Additionally, and arguably the most valuable thing that Jim Montgomery has brought, at least on the ice, that's measurable, is the defense and is the team defense. Defense had been the talking point of the St. Louis Blues for the past 3 years, it feels like. Having too many large contracts in the blue line for underperforming players, undersized guys. There was just no hope for this defense to get good. This offseason, Doug Armstrong did everything he could to address this. Obviously, the Torrey Krug trade tried to go through last offseason and got vetoed. So Army pivoted this offseason and said, well, if we can't shore up our defensemen, let's see what we can do in our depth forwards, and especially that bottom 6, signing guys like Radek Faksa, trading for Matthew Joseph. Sundqvist has been a huge defensive efforts guy, and Bolduc obviously or apparently has really progressed into a plus defensive forward on top of Holloway and Kyrou and Shen all having great defensive years. So that wasn't necessarily the case all under Bannister either. Now, Holloway, Shen, and Kyrou were having a great year together, but especially that fourth line, that WTF line, was not producing and was not being deployed in the same way. And that's what Jim Montgomery has been so able to identify, is how to fight and how to play team defense. So getting into the statistics, under Montgomery, the Blues are 4th in goals allowed in the NHL. They have allowed the 4th least goals in the entire league. And that's not a fluke either. They're 5th in expected goals against. So this is a top 5 defensive team in the NHL. There has been a step up from the blue line players as well. Guys like Broberg really amplifying that core, as making Falk not so much a liability. And also Colton Parayko, when he was playing, was a huge defensive help. And then, of course, the addition of Cam Fowler. Now, Fowler's addition has been almost entirely offensive, but he's allowed his partners to not have to take so much offensively, which means they can help defense out more. So the defense the defensemen have done their part defensively, but really it's been this forward group that has been putting their bodies on the line, especially during this win streak. I can point to several games just off the top of my head where guys were throwing their bodies around, doing everything they could to block shots. In that Vancouver overtime win, in that Colorado win to win their 9th straight, that 2-1 victory. In the Detroit game, I mean, Nick Leddy literally saved a goal, and there were several other efforts just like that. And all throughout this win streak, we have seen everyone really playing this team defense mentality that's been just a radical paradigm shift from Drew Bannister and honestly from any St. Louis Blues team we had seen in the past several years. I mean, even under Berube, when we had a solid defensive roster, that was from the defensemen, and the offense, the forwards drove the offense. Everyone fit into their roles. The roles under Montgomery has been much more fluid, and that really allows a more creative brand of hockey that teams just haven't been able to adapt to. And if you can not only surprise teams, but then overpower them and get that goal in, that momentum starts to build. And this team is so good at putting on pressure and keeping pressure throughout the entire game. And I really think all of this starts with that team defensive mentality, just that hive mind, swarm desire to block every puck, stop everything from getting to the net, is so critical for a number of reasons. Another one being how much it helps out the netminders. So the Blues under Montgomery all season since November are 3rd in the NHL in high danger chances against. They're a top 3 team in not allowing high danger shots and shot attempts. And this has really helped out Binnington and Hofer, 2 goalies who are a great goalie tandem. We all knew it coming into the season, and we all saw it last year when they had a mediocre roster in front of them. They elevated that roster. Unfortunately, they weren't able to continue that incredible pace, unsurprisingly, because pretty much no goalie ever is. And if you are, then you're a Hall of Fame goalie. And so when that defense continued to be mediocre, they struggled. Some nights they could steal it for you, and others just got away from them. Having this defensive mentality has really shored up those games that Hofer and Binner have played. That's really lessened the amount of blow-up starts. I mean, even last night in Colorado, a 5-4 victory over Colorado, Colorado scored their 4th goal in the last 2 seconds of the game. Now, for the stats and just for everyone, I think we would all like to not see that goal in, but it really didn't matter in the grand scheme of things at all. And the defensive, a lot of these games not only have been dominant offensive performance, have not allowed a ton of goals either. That Pittsburgh game is an outlier for sure to win their 11th straight, but they were able to pull it off. Shout out Robert Thomas, future captain, but allowing Detroit or holding Detroit to only 1 goal, holding Colorado to 1 goal, Nashville to 2 goals, Montreal to 1 goal. The only team to score more than 2 goals in this win streak was the Vancouver Canucks on a Brock Besser slap shot with 3 seconds left in the game. And then, of course, the last 2 games in the streak. So this team has been able to limit high danger chances and limit chances entirely. And it just puts so much mental stress on the opponent that I think is so immeasurable to why this team is so hot. Is not only do they play a very dominating, physical, scrappy, and annoying style of hockey to play against, but mentally they are so tough to keep in the game all 60 minutes. And mentally for their opponents, it is so hard and frustrating to play against a team like this. And that has made their success so much more sweet for us and so much more confounding and irritating, which then makes you have a harder time playing against this team. So I really think that they are not only winning on the ice, but off the ice with this Jim Montgomery hockey in a way that's so hard to quantify with just stats and numbers. They are there, but there's also this really critical part of the mentality and the grit of this team makes it not only a difficult hockey challenge to beat, but a difficult mental battle to win. And that's just such a credit to Jim Montgomery and the coaching culture that he has built up in his short time in St. Louis so far. Signed him to a 5-year deal. I expect that will not be the last deal he signs in St. Louis. I mean, what a phenomenal coaching job. Could arguably be a candidate for the Jack Adams again this year. I think probably won't and maybe shouldn't win it just because of the games coached and everything. But in his shortened sample size, you cannot argue that Jim Montgomery is not one of the best coaches in the NHL right now. And if that's how you want to vote, then power to you. I understand the argument. Also, so more specifically honing in on the win streak, the last 12 games, the Blues are first in goals for and second in goals for percentage. So that's more so where those expected numbers are lining up to the actual production numbers. So their production has been consistent, but now not only has their production been as consistent as it has been throughout the season under Montgomery, their expected numbers are getting up there too, which to me is signaling that this isn't just a team playing hot. This is truly a team finding its identity and playing to its strengths, being put in the best position to succeed and going out and doing every night what they know how to do best. They are tied for second in goals allowed. So again, not allowing really any chances. And they are the Blues are fourth in high danger goals for percentage and fourth in save percentage. Those are both defensive stats. So high danger goals for of the opposing team, the Blues have allowed the fourth least in the league, and then save percentage, obviously. So once again, just finding ways to shut down game scripts. Corsi still doesn't necessarily like them, but they're throwing hits, they're blocking shots, and they are doing more off the sheet than they're able to record on the sheet. And even then, in this win streak, the metrics still look good. So now I kind of want to get into a breakdown and go through the games themselves and just talk about some takeaways about what each means for this team going forward and looking back on the season as well. So the streak started against Minnesota in Minnesota with a 5-1 win. That was the Jordan Kyrou hat trick game. And Jordan Kyrou, by the way, has is over point per game in his career against Minnesota and Nashville. Just absolutely owns those two teams and is almost point per game versus every Central Division team except the Jets, where he is way far off. Just really struggles against Winnipeg. And honestly, it feels like the Blues have struggled against Winnipeg in the regular season for some time. But yeah, Kyrou hat trick game, and to me, that was the beginning of starting to see some life that coming out of the Four Nations break. I mean, that was a little bit after the Four Nations break, but Minnesota at the time was in a divisional spot. That was before Colorado had taken over the third Central Division spot. Now, I think most people probably expected Colorado to take over, and pretty much everyone agreed that they were the better team. But at the time, Minnesota was thought to be a really good team. And the Blues absolutely thrashed them, stomped, dominated. And this was arguably, again, but after they dominated Pittsburgh the game previous, just couldn't get the win in that one. But regardless, so really only takeaway from that first Minnesota game is they can crush those low-tier playoff teams. Thinking about your Minnesotas, your Ottawas, Montreal, arguably you could say like Calgary and Vancouver are not necessarily in the playoff picture, but you get the point I'm making here. Next up, they played Anaheim at home, 7-2. Not a lot to be said there, and honestly, should have been 7-1. But a sort of bad goal let in there. But when you score a touchdown with the extra point in a National Hockey League game, I don't think there's going to be a ton of analysis there. Just the boys were buzzing. That was a big WTF line. I believe Radek Faksa scored and might have had a multi-point night. I think Toropchenko scored as well. So in Minnesota, we're seeing domination from our best And in against Anaheim, who admittedly is a lower caliber team, but still a scrappy young team that can win games. I think they're more talented than their record says, though they still are a bit off in their rebuild. But that was more the depth really coming through and winning that game. Then they had a big one against Nashville in Nashville. 4-1 was the final there. And that was an absolute dominating win in a game where things got pretty scrappy. Nashville and Minnesota have always been teams that love to play scrappy and try and really be pesky against the Blues. At least in my fandom, I find that those two teams typically get chippier than most Central Division games. And this was another one par for the course in a game with some difficult officiating too. Not only did the boys find a way to win, they found a way to crush the Predators 4-1 in a statement victory where everything was going against them. Could have very easily been a trap game. And honestly, I was expecting them to lose one of these Nashville games. And yet this is a way that they found a way to scrap out a win and tire out the defense and show that we are a class or two above you, Nashville. So that is 3 different ways that they found a win in their first 3 games of this win streak. Moving on to the biggest one, maybe my favorite moment of the season was that overtime game against Vancouver. Now, obviously, the fact that it went to overtime and the way that it went to overtime is a little bit of a cloud that hangs over this one. If any of you didn't catch it or haven't been caught up, Brock Besser got the puck with like 5 seconds to go and was left all alone in the high slot and just ripped a slap shot that beat Binnington. With again, like the time was down to the final seconds. All they had to do was get in front of that puck and gave up in the last. And also that was when Falk, Buchnevich, and one more who I want to say is neighbors, but I am not sure about that, all had empty net chances. And instead of trying to throw anything at the net, they just lazily lofted it out and cleared the zone and got a fresh line change. And I do think that they learned from that. We've seen them really play a lot harder in the final minutes, as we'll get to the next week against Colorado. But yeah, a bad game to let go to overtime. But the Holloway, Shen, and Broberg play to end the game was just chef's kiss perfection. And again, probably my favorite moment of the season was Broberg scoring in that game, because that was a Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg multi-point night for both of them, if I'm not mistaken, and showing the sort of second caliber of players, or arguably for Holloway this season, and Broberg, honestly, like, this is the elevation of guys who we thought could be interesting depth pieces becoming core parts of this team. And arguably, I think Holloway and Broberg, I mean, there have been several moments throughout the season, but if somehow they weren't in the national media's attention by then, this game definitely put them on watch. And so I wouldn't say as much this one they found a way to win, but more so they learned, I think, from keeping your opponent in the game and the damage that can do potentially in a playoff race as well, which again, talking about how much experience for guys like Bolduc, guys like, well, we'll get to Jimmy Snuggerud, but, Bolduc, Holloway, Broberg, even Jake Neighbors, like how important it is to put these games away. I think they really learned from that, as we'll get to in our next couple games here. Next game was a 4-1 victory over Chicago. This one was a really, really crappy game, and the final score is 4-1. So I think this goes back to that sort of like scrappy game. Like they looked flat. They looked tired. They looked like this was the trap game. And honestly, usually it is your divisional rivals that are the traps, that know how to play you, know how to beat you, are familiar with your coaching, your players, because they play you more times a year. And often, cores are locked up. You see them more in repeated years. The Hawks have been pesky, although they haven't really had a great record against the Blues. But they looked kind of dangerous and came out firing in this one, scored an early goal, and it kind of felt like this could be the moment where they lost it. But no, this team battled back and found a way. This was a signature third period comeback for the team, which would become so important and indicative of this team's play style going forward. So that ended up being a 4-1 victory in a game that they were lazy, essentially started out. They dug deep and they found a way to scrap out a win. And even in a game where they were probably getting outplayed, they remembered that as long as we don't give in entirely, and arguably against a better competition team, maybe they would have been too far behind, and that could have been the end of the streak. But that's not how things went. So, speculation can only get you so far. And when they saw that they were still in the game with 20 minutes to go, they identified this is how we are going to win this team, and they came out and played with their hair on fire. And that's exactly the fight you love to see. You would love to see it more in the early periods, but again, I think this is a game that they could learn from and really grow and identify the strength that they have that in the third period. They know that the third period is a strength for them. That was actually something that they cited in the Colorado game, which I keep referencing. So I'll just save it for that discussion. But yeah, that was a big one for sure. So next up was another 4-1 over Nashville, and this one was an ugly, ugly game. This was just sloppy passes on both sides. So many hits being thrown, fights. This was in St. Louis. It was loud. It was rowdy. This was like a 1970s like bruiser hockey game. And when you've got a 5'9" Australian guy who brings the thunder from down under, and a 6'6" Russian all playing on a line, as your excuse me, sorry, I bumped my mic. As your enforcer types. I mean, I think what this game taught this team was that you can't out physical and out tough the Blues this season. It's not going to happen. You're not going to out tough them. You can out skill them maybe. You can outscore them probably. You can even compete with them, but you cannot out compete and you cannot out tough. And it seemed like that was the Predators' whole game plan. Really, not much offensive going for them, and that's a 4-1 victory. 6-1 over Montreal. That was a huge game for playoff implications for both teams. So it was absolutely a playoff atmosphere in St. Louis, but there was still a loud crowd for both teams. And this was a game that could have gone either way. This was a very, very scary, very hot team fighting for their life in the playoff race. And the Blues absolutely handed it to them. Montreal came out flying around in the first period, looking like they were going to take this game, like they wanted it more, not necessarily playing with more structure. In fact, playing with a lot less structure, but just playing with so much fire and just raw energy, like just a ball of raw energy flying around. No coordination, very little skill, but they've got some serious goal scorers on that team, and that can be a winning script. But no, one goal allowed to one of the best offensive teams this year with some of the best goal scoring threats in the league, and an absolute masterclass of a performance by this team's defense and by the goaltender for that night, who I actually don't remember here, so I'm going to pull it up really quick. But an absolute statement win it was Binner. Okay. For Benner and the boys in a huge must-win game. And there was never even there was a question before the goals started flying, but once they broke through and, played a team with not good defense, they showed that that's not going to work. This team can score goals against the best of the best, against the best defensive teams in the league. Again, we're getting there. So if you don't have the defense, you're just not going to be able to compete with the St. Louis Blues. Moving on to the last Nashville game in a chance to sweep the season series against their divisional rival Nashville Predators, as well as eliminate them from the playoffs entirely. They were able to hold on and do it. This was another late game that was just, they had been playing so hard for so long that they came out a little flat, a little tired. And I think this one was more understandable than that Chicago game. But still a slow team with not great defense. The Blues showed that that's not going to work. You're not going to be able to reliably beat the Blues if your team is slow and can't play defense, especially into the third period. The amount of toughness and marathon mindset that they have has been just critical and just amazing. So here's probably the biggest game in the stretch. Now we have gotten to this. So the Blues have now won 8 in a row from Minnesota to Nashville. For their 9th straight win, let me make sure that's right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes. So facing their 9th straight win, which already they had put the league on notice. But the talking point around the time was, okay, they beat Nashville 3 times, a bottom 5 team in the league. They beat Chicago, a bottom 2 team in the league. They beat Anaheim, a bottom 10 to 12 team in the league. And then they beat Minnesota, the worst playoff team, and Montreal, the other worst playoff team. So perhaps they could be a scrappy wild card fun story, but now it's a real test, and now it's the back to reality for the St. Louis Blues is what it was supposed to be. Jim Montgomery took his guys after a long stretch of games. They had, from the beginning of their stretch, and even going back before that, they had game against Pittsburgh, and then off day, back to back, off day game, off day game, off day back to back, off day game, off day game, off day game. So this was almost 3 straight weeks of playing hockey with not more than 1 day of rest in between each game, with 2 back-to-back weekends in a row. That's a lot of hockey, and they had been playing at such a high level of effort and compete in that time that they were tired. And this was a road trip to Colorado, an area obviously with famously very high altitude. It's very hard to breathe. It's hard to just be an athlete in an environment like that. And what did they do? They beat one of the best teams in the Western Conference and one of the Stanley Cup favorites. And they did so in a pretty convincing fashion. The defensive performance in this Colorado Avalanche game, March 29th, was unmatched. It was unbelievable. Cale Makar earned first star of the game and didn't have a point. That's how dominant of a defensive performance that this was. The Avs only ended up registering 29 shots on goal and still looked absolutely terrifying offensively. Yet there was always another body there, another player, another person putting a stick out, putting a leg out, laying out to block these shots. And not only the shot blocking, but Binnington had the night of his life. I really think Colorado might be his favorite team to play. I'll never get over that 2022 playoff run where he had a .950 save percentage in the series, maybe more, but yeah, Binnington stepped up big. The defense stepped up big, and we got offensive contributions when we needed it. Bolduc was all over the ice, scored 1, and honestly probably should have had 2 or 3 more. Mackenzie Blackwood also had a phenomenal goaltending game. But credit to the Avs, who are one of the best defensive teams in the league, held Bolduc and the Blues to only 1 goal until the 3rd period, where finally Pavel Buchnevich was able to break out of a slump, bang one in. And ever since this moment, Buch is all the way back. He looks so confident. He has had some great games after great games. So thank you, Colorado, for unlocking our star winger. And you love to see it for him. And again, I just cannot stress how much of an impact Robert Thomas, Zach Bolduc, Pavel Buchnevich, all of these guys had on this game, just absolutely doing everything in their power to win, especially defensively and offensively. The two-way play in this game and the level of compete and effort was truly beautiful. It was beautiful hockey. After how much they had been through, facing such a high pressure game, playing against a divisional rival, a game that they were expected to lose, a game on the road after such a long, tiring stretch of schedule, they found a way and they took it to their divisional rival and one of the best teams in the league, one of the Cup favorites. This was when the Blues really started to put the league on notice. And Colorado, all they had to do was tip their caps. They had to hand it to them. The Blues beat them, and they beat them fair and square. This wasn't a fluky or poorly officiated game, you could argue. The refs really let the guys play, and the Blues won, and they deserved to win that game. They played better. They played better defense, and their scoring chances were converted. And Binnington was just massive. cannot emphasize how huge Binnington has been in this stretch. And that is absolutely a part of this team's identity now. A big thing brought up in those post-game interviews, which I highly recommend you check out if you haven't yet. Once again, that's March 29th, 2-1 over the Avs. A big thing that every single player interviewed brought up was the locker room chemistry that they had been building and how they were playing for every other guy on the bench, that they were playing for the note on the front rather than the name on the back, that they were playing for each other. Binnington personally identified the effort on defense everyone had been showing made him play better, fired him up to lock in and hold it down for his teammates. And he did just that. And in turn, everyone, all the skaters obliged and did their part and played as hard defense as they could because they knew that they could compete with one of the best teams in the league. And not only did they do that, but they beat them, and they beat them convincingly. So that was a huge game, really put the league on notice. Then they got a well-earned 2-day break, finally came back at home against the I also forgot to mention at some point Dalibor Dvorsky got called up in the Nashville game at home. Looked good, didn't register a point, hasn't played since, but looked really good, and we're excited to see him into next season, but I doubt he will make the playoff roster. He got sent down to Springfield, recently recalled with the Dylan Holloway injury, but probably still just an extra skater. Will practice with the team. We'll get the energy and feel of a playoff run, but probably not going to be on the playoff team again. But this game, April 1st, was Jimmy Snuggerud's debut, which I was at, which was a lot of fun. And it was a lot of fun at the end. It was a hard game to watch. This was another game that they just came out, not necessarily flat, but just were really sloppy with their passes for the first period. And there was no score into the third period. It really felt like the next goal could be the winning goal. That's just how slow of a game this was. So this was kind of a new game script that they hadn't yet taken on, was when just things go out the window. Nothing is really working. Poor passes, poor shot attempts. They were competing. I don't think that they were playing totally flat, but just not connecting on anything. It's one of those nights in sports. It can happen. This was a new game script for them. How did they respond? Jordan Kyrou, game-tying goal with 30 seconds left to go in the game. They play the full 60 minutes every night, fight as hard as they can, because this team knows that they can compete in every single game that they are up against. They know that they are one of the best teams in the NHL. They know that teams should be scared of them. And just that confidence of knowing at any point that you can win this game and that you expect to win the game has just been so massive to their identity. I really think Montgomery's culture and coaching has brought in that confidence that if the players know that if we do what we know how to do right, if we can do what our coach says and play hockey how we know we can play hockey, we can win any game. We can beat anybody. And so they did. Took Detroit to overtime, and at that point, Detroit was just completely outgunned, outmanned. There was never really a real scoring chance, and the Blues have really been able to convert those overtime games into wins. Even before Jim Montgomery came in, that was actually something Drew Bannister was kind of best at. Was Braden Shen in overtime has just been unbelievable this year. And of course, now it's Fowler steps up big. And oh my gosh, that Fowler outlet pass, which actually I might be misremembering my games here because I believe it was a feed to neighbors, but wow, that was unreal. Snuggerud failed to record a point in this game. Is that right? Yes. Snuggerud failed to record a point in this game, but had some really, really, really good scoring opportunities. Looked ready. Definitely in the first two periods, at least in my viewing, I would say that he definitely looked shaky. Just looked nervous. It looked like the nerves were getting to him. But once that third period hit, it's like a flip switch within this Blues team, and Jimmy Snuggerud was part of that. And it's like he was the prospect, prodigal child promised to us. Some P alliteration for you there. But anyways, that was Detroit. That was win number 10. So to tie the 2019 record, the St. Louis Blues had to take on the Pittsburgh Penguins at home with Sidney Crosby on just an unbelievable point streak. And the Pens took it to them. This was a weird game. This was, again, another like new game script for them, to where they go up big early, but then the Pens slowly creep their way back into the game. And yeah, it didn't look good first. So Pittsburgh scores early and very early. That didn't look good at all. Like they were potentially going to stop the Blues run before they could get to 11, make that storybook run back to the 2019 team. But then Jake Neighbors immediately in the second period puts one home to tie the game, and you can immediately feel the energy in the building rise. That once that equalizer goal gets scored in all of these games that the Blues have gone down, once they get that equalizer, you just feel the hunger, you feel the fire, you feel the fight that this team has to win games and to close that distance. I really think they're pretty good in the early game because they're a good hockey team, but late in the games are when the St. Louis Blues win and dominate these games. Then Pittsburgh fired back, but there was a very quick response again, and then another goal almost a minute later, and the Blues had a lead before another Jake Neighbors goal, which was Snuggerud's first point, and he had been due. He had such a good game all night too. But then this is where the Penguins start to come back, and one of the things that has not been super excellent for the Blues in just the entire season, Montgomery or no, has been the penalty kill, and so allow a power play goal and then kind of a bad goal too. First NHL goal for Rutger McGroarty. Does not sound like a hockey player, but hey, congrats, he made it to the show. But yeah, so the Penguins tied it with 20 seconds left in the game, 25 seconds left in the game. Again, this is another late lead blown in the last seconds of the game. During this streak, they really know how to give us a heart attack, I think we can all say. And this is another one like Vancouver that you hope they learn from and like to have back. I really think in a game like Detroit and in some of those Nashville games, they showed that they had learned from this. But in this Pittsburgh game, perhaps got a little bit confident resting on their laurels now that they had been on this hot streak, versus in the Vancouver game, they didn't know exactly how good of a team that they could be at perhaps, or hadn't had the results for it. So I think this can be another game that they could learn from to shut down, although you could argue with the Colorado game coming up, maybe that isn't the case, but take them to overtime. But Rob Thomas, again, just has been all over the place during this stretch of games, and is such a critical. I mean, Rob Thomas is the architect of the Blues offense. He is the heart and soul of the team for sure on the ice. He's the leader in points despite playing in less games. And absolutely, when he's not going, this offense can be good, but when he's on, this offense is one of the best in the league. Thomas is such an underrated playmaker, always has been. It looks like probably always will be. And we'll skip ahead here, but this is the Robert Thomas section. For this stretch of games, Thomas has 23 points in the 12 games, in the 12-game win streak. Almost 2 points per game. 23 points in 12 games. And he has scored 4 goals and 19 assists to a +12 rating. Only taken 1 penalty, and just absolutely unbelievable play from Robert Thomas. Just to go through his point totals here. So starting at Minnesota, 2-1-1-0-1. But then starting against Nashville in the Dvorsky debut, he goes 3 points, 4 points versus Montreal, 2 points, 2 points in a game where they scored 2 goals. So had a point on both goals in the huge Colorado game. 1 point versus Detroit, 2 points versus Colorado, and then 4 versus Colorado again. That's 2 4-point games and a 3-point game, as well as other multi-point games for almost a 2-point per game pace. Robert Thomas is absolutely an unsung hero in the NHL. I think we all appreciate that he's really good, but I'm not sure that he totally gets all the credit he deserves for being the architect, the structure, the driver of this offense. Like I said, the Blues offense can be very good, but if Rob Thomas isn't going, then it's never going to be great. When he's on, this team is great. End of story. He's just that kind of impact player. And of course, finally, last night, break their franchise record against Colorado in a hard fought battle. Colorado ended up putting 39 shots on goal, which is their most in this stretch by far, most shots allowed in this stretch by far, to the Blues only 22, but really found ways to win. Zach Bolduc has just been a cheat code on the power play. Almost had a hat trick, and maybe could have, but he's closing in on 20 goals on the season. What a phenomenal rookie year for Zach Bolduc. Pavel Buchnevich, who we've been talking about as one of perhaps the biggest disappointments on the team, he's only 4th in points on the team and is about to hit the 20-goal plateau as well. So an overall okay year for Buchnevich, all things being said. Like I said, he has been so back in the last couple games, registering a ton of shot attempts, and really playing great offense. Defensively, maybe a step back from where he was, but offensively, so there. Jake Neighbors hits his 22nd on the year. And yeah, so this is a game where the Blues came out to a 4-0 lead. I wouldn't say this is as much of a blown lead. I mean, it is a blown lead because the Avs ended up firing 4 unanswered goals back to tie the game. Or that's not, they had 3 unanswered goals back to bring the game within 1. But the Avs versus, the Penguins game, I would argue the Avs are, I mean, it is a fact that the Avs are a much, much better team. And I really do think a lot of these games were just like great games from these great players. I don't know, like that first goal, the Ross Colton goal, I'm not really sure that there was much Bennington could have done. And that last goal, which was Sam Malinsky, which, ended up not really mattering in literally the last 10 seconds of the game. That one, you'd argue you definitely want back. That shows a little bit of letting your foot off the gas. But, for the first 59 minutes and 30 seconds, this team was really playing hard, and just the Avalanche are a really good team. Like I said, I think that perhaps a really great offensive team can probably crack through the Blues defense. I don't know that this offense can be entirely shut down. And they showed that against one of the best defensive teams in the league. And I think a team that matches up really well against the Blues, as in is a really difficult and maybe unfavorable matchup, is the Colorado Avalanche, because the way that the Blues have been playing and have been winning, that's what we're going to get to now, is that they have been playing fast. They are a fast team in under Montgomery. Their season totals are actually pretty low on that, but I do think that's guys like Saad getting extra minutes of ice time. I do think that's like Suter, Fowler. I think the numbers are skewed essentially. The Blues are a fast team, and they play a fast break offense. I think anyone who's watched the games could tell you that. And their defensive effort builds and creates that transition that they can build their offense off of. And I really think that that's the identity that they have found themselves playing with. And so Colorado is an also incredibly fast team. And not only that, but they are defensively incredible. Their defensemen are great. Their forwards have good defense too. And obviously Makar and McKinnon are 2 of the, 5, 15 best players in the league, depending on who you ask. In this win, in their 5-4 win to set the franchise record, Makar and McKinnon each 1 point. In their previous win over the Avalanche, Makar 0 points, McKinnon 1 point. So they have proven that while good offenses can beat their defense, if your offense relies on only a couple guys and not so much that depth scoring model, that there is really that is a very at least neutral game script for the Blues. They absolutely shut down Cale Makar in both of these games because they identified him as the biggest threat. McKinnon, too. McKinnon still got his, but still a 1-point night for McKinnon versus a 4-point night for Robert Thomas is exactly the kind of play you need from your top end players and from your depth to hold guys like McKinnon to only 1 point. That's exceptional. And so, yeah, the way that they play is really fast and is just such high effort and high energy that a slower paced team, they can absolutely overpower and barrel through. A team that can match their pace, the Blues aren't necessarily a highly skilled team. You know, Jordan Kyrou has all the skill in the world, Robert Thomas, but for the most part, this is not a very technical puck handling type team. This is quick passes, setting up a structure, playing on the rush, playing in transition. And so a team that can match that and essentially play like man defense hockey kind of can shut that down. But they found a way to break through against Colorado. They shut down Makar, and that opened up so many opportunities. Zach Bolduc has just been such a weapon, and Pavel Buchnevich being back in this role and being able to convert scoring chances has also been absolutely critical. So just some overall takeaways from going through these games. They took care of the bad teams. You know, you could argue that this streak is well, I would say you couldn't argue that the streak is kind of fluky because they beat the bad teams. Even like the best teams lose to the bad teams sometimes, but no, they beat every single one. And for the games that were against tougher opponents, they fought tooth and nail for every last win. They found every way to win a game script. I can't not stress that point enough, that they just have so many different ways to fight and win. There were moments of frustration for sure, but the other big thing is that never slowed down the team. Even again, just going through, like in that Vancouver game, letting in that equalizer to take the game to overtime, they didn't look out of it. They didn't get despondent and down on themselves when they let that goal in. They said, oh, that sucks. Let's get to work and win this game because we know we can. And that's exactly what they did. Played flat against Nashville or against Chicago, doesn't matter. We know we're better than them. Let's bunker down and win this game because we know we can. In that Colorado game, like the whole game was just arguably frustrating, but stuck with what they knew that they could do and won that game. Detroit was a huge mental battle, more than a physical one. That the Detroit defense was just playing so well that night for a team like kind of facing elimination, backed against the wall. Their defense was really exceptional that night, and the Blues knew that they could absolutely win this game. And that third period rolled around. They said, we're going to dominate this game and we're going to come out with a victory. Fought tooth and nail, and it never slowed them down. That mental toughness that they have showed in this stretch is just unmatched. Again, it's this culture of playing for each other, playing for every other guy next to you on the bench, playing more for the note on the front than the name on the back, and working harder than the next guy. That's how you build team chemistry. And Jim Montgomery has just been exceptional. On top of that, you're adding an infusion of young talent in Jimmy Snuggerud, who looks amazing, not necessarily putting up the production, but still looks fine. And absolutely, we expect big things from this kid. Looks like he can make an impact right now. And one last major takeaway I have here to close out is that as their streak only got harder, playing teams like Nashville a third time, playing Montreal, a playoff team, and then Colorado twice, and even Detroit gave them a tough time. As their streak got harder, they didn't let off the gas. It's almost like that excited them, and they answered every challenge. They took down every threat. They came up to bat and were looking to swing every time and found a way to win. Whether it was, all the different ways we've gone into in this video, I need not repeat them, but they absolutely answered the bell every single time. And that's just so huge. So I would argue that this is a mixture of things. You could say there's a little bit of luck baked in there, sure, but I'm not going to say that they're on the streak because they're lucky. I think that's just the natural luck of sports. I think you can credit so much of this to Jim Montgomery's coaching ability, the structure that he has built, and team culture and chemistry that he has facilitated and cultivated in this locker room. So his coaching ability, the biggest thing that I know Sundqvist has talked about in several interviews is that he makes Monty simplifies so easily to what every player's responsibility is, makes it so easy to identify for each skater on the ice to know exactly what I have to do, exactly what space I have to fill, where I have to put my stick. If I get the puck with this look on those set plays, it's either I go here or I go there. You're just reading one guy or you're reading two guys. If they pinch that way, I go this way. If not, I go the other way. And if they do something else, I go right down the middle. Stuff like that. That is just so easy. That makes the mental battle for this team, it completely cuts it out, that they don't have to be overthinking and getting in their own heads. That's what's allowed them to play so hard and play so tough, is that they're not worrying about the game script. They're not worrying about the narrative. They're just going out there and playing hockey because they have a good coach who can instill in them that confidence and that ease of play. And that brings up the structure part of this too, is that Jim Montgomery's coaching style, the way that he is able to build and develop a team is just unbelievable. It's truly been night and day, as I broke down at the beginning of this episode, how good. I'm sorry about that. The lights just went out here for those on video. But how good the void is returned. How good the defense has been, the team defense, and getting guys in the right positions, and setting up power play looks, unlocking Bolduc as a weapon, stuff like that. The coaching structure has just been exceptional, getting guys in positions to succeed, getting Holloway and Kyrou more breakout chances, getting Sonny to play hard down below the net, getting Nathan Walker to just throw a hit. I mean, at that Detroit game I went to, I think it was the second period started, and Nathan Walker had one shift that was like 30 seconds, already 2 hits. Like, that is exactly what he is meant to do, to chip down at the stamina of opposing teams, and it works so well. And then finally, I said the culture, absolutely. Like, that buy-in from every player is so intangible, yet you can feel it. It's something that can't be quantified, but you can see it. It's paradoxical, but it works. But seriously, this is something that is just unbelievable. And I think it's credit to Montgomery, but also the front office and everyone in the Blues organization. Doug Armstrong has been a long-time GM. If this was if Army had been fired after some of those disappointing seasons in seasons past, I don't know that this culture is as strong as it is when you're coming in with a new GM. You're not sure what moves he's going to make. You're not sure who's going to be traded away. Army is a guy with rapport in the team that they knew what to expect and knew from the top down what this Blues team could be. Obviously, Monty is a huge part of that culture. I keep going back to, as soon as he came in, that first interview, he said St. Louis is a working class city. We are undervalued by the national media. We are underappreciated. People don't listen to us unless we make them, so we're going to make them. And that's exactly what he did. And he got all of these players to buy into that scrappy underdog mentality. And I think it's just been such an awesome identity to take for this team, because they know, being the underdog, that they are better than any team in any given night that they can go up against. And they know that the opposing teams are scared to face off against the St. Louis Blues. And that culture of confidence and of just teamwork and grit and tenacity, that's the word I'm looking for. It's made all the difference. So just to finish up here, looking forward to, knock on wood, but there are 4 games left to play in the season. And I believe Money Puck has the Blues at a 99% now chance to make the playoffs. So it is kind of all but settled. We're gonna assume that the Blues are in, but don't want to jinx anything too much. But almost certainly they will be playing the Vegas Golden Knights. I'm gonna do this exercise as if they're playing the Golden Knights. Right now they are ahead of the Wild by 2 points. but are, as we've been saying, are on a 12-game win streak, don't look like slowing down, and the Wild have been limping into the playoffs and are kind of fighting for their playoff spot now, more with the Flames than we are. But I'm going to do this as if we were playing Vegas, although I think a lot of it does apply to Winnipeg too. They're a little bit similar. But so if the Blues take the first wild card spot, which they currently hold, they will play the Vegas Golden Knights, who will almost certainly win the Pacific. The Kings are only 3 points behind them, and both teams have 6 games to play, so it's not impossible. But I do think Vegas is probably going to finish out strong. They've been playing really well lately. So have the Kings. It's definitely a chance, and I did break down on a recent episode why the Kings are a positive matchup. Of the 3 potential playoff teams that we could play, being Winnipeg, Vegas, and LA, I do think Vegas would be the hardest, the team I would least want to play, followed by probably Winnipeg and then LA. But that being said, I really think that this is a team that the Blues can beat. So Vegas, as of right now, as of today, April 6th, has 100 points. They are 46, 22, and 8 and hold the Pacific crown. They are 6th in the league in goals for and against at all strengths on the season. So top 6th, if very rudimentary stat here to quantify this, but by this statistic are the 6th best offense and defense in the league. And their key players are pretty familiar names across the league. Vegas really likes to pick some franchise icons, as it were. But anyways, obviously Jack Eichel, Mark Stone has not played the season on LTIR miraculously. Still only played 62 games, but is looking like he's going to be able to play in the playoffs. And did look pretty injured last year in the playoffs. Had a pretty quiet series or a pretty quiet run, and did look injured. And he looks better and healthy. So Eichel and Stone are legit. Tomas Hertl is, I believe, their second leading scorer in goals behind Pavel Dorofeyev, who has been kind of a surprise young player for them. But who's their team leader in goals. And then Shea Theodore on the defensive side. Former Blues Ivan Barbashev and Alex Pietrangelo are still kicking around doing the exact same thing that they had done in St. Louis for so many years. So there's a lot of star talent to above average talent on this team. Their depth is perhaps not so much. The way that Vegas runs their team is really interesting. And so breaking down the matchup here, I really think that it just provides an interesting thought exercise, because the way that they construct their team is a very unique structure of complementary play styles. They kind of try and get, also former Blue Brandon Saad is on the Vegas Golden Knights. They kind of try and make every line do the same thing with different players, and obviously to a different degree, because you can't have every line produce like a first line, or else you would obviously win the Stanley Cup, and they totally could. But anyways, they really like to have an enforcer, strong type player. So on their first line, that's Barbashev. They really like to have a sniper, finisher, goal scorer. That's Jack Eichel, and on the first line. And then they like to have a playmaker to complement, which is Mark Stone on the first line. And kind of each line, they like to have a similar player like that. Dorofeyev is their goal scorer. Saad has been more of a physical presence in Vegas, maybe not so much. And then Brett Howden is their 2C. On the third line, they've got Victor Olofsson, William Karlsson, and Riley Smith. So a lot of physical guys. So they kind of like to build each line the same way. And then on their defensive pair, they typically like to have an offensive guy and a defensive guy. Shea Theodore and Brandon McNabb, Pietrangelo and Nicholas Hague. So yeah, they have this sort of they try and have identical identities for each line, versus the Blues have a very unique identity for each line. Not necessarily saying one is better or worse, but why I think this can match up well with the Blues. This means that on each line, the assignment is going to be the same for how to stop them. if you can stop their playmaker and or their goal scorer, i.e., if you can stop their best player on the line, you can shut down this offense potentially. They're obviously still going to get there sometimes. I'm not just saying we're going to sweep the Knights, but I do think that there is a path to victory against Vegas. And my template for this is look at the 2 Colorado games. Makar 0 points, McKinnon 2 points. That is legitimate defensive ability. If you can hold Stone and Eichel to 5 to 7 points in a playoff series, I really think that's a favorable matchup for the Blues, especially now that Vegas has lost some key contributors like Jonathan Marchessault. That's a really favorable structure into how the Blues have played this season, that they can shut down individual players. If you've got depth scoring out the wazoo like the Florida Panthers, yeah, that's going to be a lot harder of a task for the Blues to play. But if the way Vegas is set up, I'm just saying I think there's a chance, and I like our odds. On top of that, there's a couple more sort of weaknesses that I think the Blues can exploit and potentially come out with a series win. I'll give my predictions at the end here, but I first want to just set the stage. And we've gone into Vegas's strengths, and now we're getting into how they can be beatable. Vegas is a really slow team. They are below 50th percentile in the key speed statistics on NHL Edge, top speed and burst of speed, in pretty much every like tier of speed. With the lowest, they have the highest amount, but even then, like everyone does, because most NHL skaters can get up to 18 to 20 miles an hour. Vegas is a really slow team, and like I said, the Blues like to play fast offense and defense in transition that I think they could totally exploit from, I hate to say it, but guys like Alex Pietrangelo, 35 years old, not exactly a burner. Looking at the aforementioned Brandon Saad, I think we all saw the lack of defense that Saad plays. Brandon McNabb is 34. Eichel and Stone have been around. Riley Smith, Barbashev, these are all like vets. This is an aging core that you can outspeed. Now, Dylan Holloway will be a crucial wild card, as he's considered week to week now. If he misses this series, that is a major, major hit, because I think Dylan Holloway could be kind of the kryptonite to the Vegas Golden Knights. If I'm being honest, I think he could win this playoff series if everything goes right. But perhaps that's getting a little ahead of ourselves. Vegas is also they are 87th percentile in shots on goal, 83rd percentile in goals, and 74th percentile in offensive ice time on 5-on-5, which are all above average marks for sure. So again, they really play a very offensive style of hockey. Now, they do have the sixth fewest goals allowed, as I said, so their defense is good, but their style and structure is pretty much play enough defense to set up and use your dominating offense to win the game. And the Blues has shown against good offensive teams, like we went through on this stretch, that they can shut down good offensive teams, or at least outscore them. And this is a team you can absolutely outscore. And finally, at 5-on-5, Vegas has the highest high danger chances for, meaning that they have created the highest amount, or the largest amount of high danger chances for. But the Blues as a team allowed the third least high danger goals chances against. So it's another statistic like that where the Golden Knights' strength on offense is kind of the Blues' strength on defense. And that's the big thing here, is I really think that this is a clash of the Golden Knights' offense is able to be complemented perfectly like the Blues' defense. But if you compare it the other way around, the Golden Knights defense absolutely does not have the answer for the Blues offense right now. And I really think that could give it, at the very least, a neutral matchup for this potential playoff series. Again, if it were to be LA or Winnipeg, I think that would be very similar. Both are very slow teams. Both very much rely on individual performers rather than depth, and are also more, I think, carried by goaltending too. Maybe carried isn't the right word, but Well, I don't know. Depends who you ask. But anyways, I think it's similar analysis, but going into Vegas because that's likely who will play. And yeah, I think that this is at least a neutral matchup. So if I were to give my prediction with how hot this team is playing, I think this is a repeatable winning structure formula that they can do it. And I think that they match up not terribly into Vegas. It's obviously not a given, but I'm going to take the Blues, and I'm going to say they can do it in 6. I think this series almost certainly goes 6 or 7 games either way, but I think the Blues are absolutely going to put up a fight. And honestly, the tipping point here for me is the bad man in net. Give me playoff Binnington and a chance. I've said it before. We'll continue to say it. That is another key wild card that Vegas just does not have. We know what Binnington can do in big games. He has absolutely cemented his legacy in the NHL this season, that he is the guy you want in the big game. You're telling me that we have a playoff series against a team that we match up decently well into with the best playoff goalie in the league, arguably? I'm going Blue all the way. So let me know what you think of this episode. Thank you for tuning in today. Sorry, no live stream. As I said, we will get back to our regularly recorded things this coming week as normal, but thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, please give it a like, and we'd love to do more series like this too. If you have ideas for more video series content, we have some ideas for the off season that we're going to be doing. Plus we could do more stuff like this, previewing playoff series or anything that you may have. So leave us a comment on Spotify, on YouTube, send us DMs, Instagram, Twitter. We see all of it. We read all of it. We really appreciate your guys' support. Thank you so much for 300. Our socials have been blowing up too. So thank you everyone for tuning in. And as always, let's go Blues.